I'd like you to open your Bible to Isaiah chapter 13, and we're going to scroll back a bit from where we were studying last time to verse number 9. Now, we don't know exactly when Isaiah was speaking or writing down these particular prophecies. We're looking at them because they deal with the future judgment of the Babylonian Empire. And the Babylonians were the ones that Hezekiah got rebuked for showing them everything in Judea, which the Babylonians will eventually come back and take when they overrun the Judean kingdom in the 580s BC. Verse number 9 mentions the day of the Lord, which I've shared with you on multiple occasions, is a reference to any major judgment of God upon a people group or a city, but it ultimately applies to the second coming of Jesus and God's intervening judgment that precedes that second coming, that final 3.5 years before Jesus splits the sky with the last trumpet. That's the day of the Lord, the ultimate day of the Lord. And so when we read about these little days of the Lord, of history, there's sometimes elements of the ultimate day of the Lord that present themselves. And so that can sometimes be confusing to people, but it's actually just it's a function of theme that gets repeated in our Scripture. The day of the Lord is about judgment, and these are some of the things related to God's judgment. Okay, with that background, let's dive back in. Verse number 9 of Isaiah 13. Behold, the day of he who is, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land a desolation and to destroy its sinners from it. Now, this is specifically God's judgment against the Babylonian Empire by the hand of the Medes and the Persians. But we know anytime God intervenes with judgment, it's going to be bad. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising. The moon will not shed its light. That is something that we hear in reference to the ultimate day of the Lord. The sun going dark, the moon turning blood red, the stars falling from the sky. Verse number 11, I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. I will put an end to the pomp of the arrogant and lay low the pompous pride of the rulers. God's judgment typically comes against sinners that don't think they're doing anything wrong. They are boastful, they're prideful, they're like, you're not the boss of me, you can't tell me what to do. And God's judgment shows otherwise. Verse 12, I will make people more rare than fine gold, and mankind than the gold of Ophir. So as the Medes and the Persians sweep through the Babylonian Empire with military victory after military victory, a lot of people die. A lot of people get relocated or dislocated. And that's why it describes that people are kind of rare. Verse 13, therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the wrath of he who is of the hosts in the day of his fierce anger. There is spiritual warfare that goes on behind the scenes. Daniel will be around during the time of the Medes and the Persians overrunning the Babylonian Empire. And he will be given input by God's messengers about spiritual warfare happening behind the scenes, where fallen angels are actually apparently fighting amongst themselves for being in charge of certain regions of the world. And that comes out here kind of in this idea of the heavens, the heavenly powers are going to be shaken up. Everything's going to be turned on its head. Verse 14, like a hunted gazelle, like sheep with none to gather them. Each will turn to his own people. Each will flee to his own land. That happens when there's warfare. Whoever is found will be thrust through. That's stabbed. Whoever is caught will fall by the sword, killed. Their infants will be dashed in pieces before their eyes. I am sad to say that that is too often the abusive way of warfare. Their houses will be plundered and their wives ravished, or more specifically to the way that we speak, raped. Again, as horrible it is to talk about it, that is a very common thing in warfare when there is no moral controls on the army that's doing the invading. Verse 17, this is where we dropped off last time, and I showed you that this is the controlling verse that lets us know that this passage is specifically about Babylonian history and how the Medes and the Persians overran their empire. Behold, this is God, remember, I am stirring up the Medes against them, who have no regard for silver, do not delight in gold. So they don't care. They're not about the wealth factor. It seems as if the Medes and the Persians were just trying to take down the Babylonians. Their bows will slaughter the young men. They will have no mercy on the fruit of the womb. That's babies. Their eyes will not pity children. And Babylon, the glory of the kingdoms, the splendor and pomp of the Chaldeans, will be like Sodom and Gomorrah when God overthrew them. So the annihilation, the desolation of the once glorious Babylonian Empire will be similar to what happened to Babylon, or to Sodom and Gomorrah. Wiped out. They will become part of the dustbin of history, the dust heap of history. Then a little something about Babylon city. It will never be inhabited or lived in for all generations. No Arab will pitch his tent there. No shepherds will make their flocks lie down there. And this is true to this day. The ruins of Babylon kind of disappeared from history for a long time. And then in more modern history, they were discovered and they've become an archaeological dig. But they've never become a city again. If you were able to go to Iraq, which is where Babylon is located, you might be able to go around to the archaeological digs, although the Iraqis kind of destroyed some of these. The Iranians were involved in destroying some of them, and some of the radical elements within Iraq destroyed some of these ruins. But basically, there's just archaeological ruins where Babylon City used to be. Yeah, sure, some people are there temporarily, but nobody lives there permanently. The wild animals will lie down there, and their houses will be full of howling creatures. And that was true in history, that this became a wilderness region. There, ostriches will dwell. Every time I come to the word ostriches here, I remind you that more than likely the word is a reference to some sort of noisy bird or noisy animal of the wilderness, because that's the point, is that these animals are living there and making lots of noise. There, wild goats will dance, hyenas will cry in its towers, and jackals in the pleasant palaces Its time is close at hand, and its days will not be prolonged. So this prophecy is about the erasure of the proud city of Babylon once it becomes the glory of Mesopotamia. God will take it down, will desolate it, and right up until the end of human history, it will never recover that glory. Chapter 14. For he who is will have compassion on Jacob, and will again choose Israel, and will set them in their own land, and sojourners will join them, and will attach themselves to the house of Jacob. Now, this is not a shift in thought, it is simply a shift in focus. Because once Babylon is taken down by the Medes and Persians, almost immediately the returns, as we style them, of the ethnic Israelis from Babylonian and Assyrian exile back to the homeland, the promised land, begin. Cyrus the Great, probably at the prompting of Daniel, that is the book of Daniel in particular, sends ethnic Israelis back to the promised land to restart the country, the city, the temple, the religion, to prepare for the next part of the Messianic story, the Messianic project. Jesus will come to, for the very first time, he will come to a re-established in the land Israeli presence. And so that's prophesied right here. Verse 2, the peoples will take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel will possess them in he who is his land as male and female slaves. When the Israelis come back, they will end up with non-Israelis living among them. Some of them will be in servitude. And that's prophesied here as well. They will take captives those who were their captors and rule over those who oppress them. Meaning that some of the ethnic groups that once oppressed the Israelis will end up serving the Israelis. Verse 3, and that did happen. Verse 3, when he who is has given you rest from your pain and turmoil, and the hard service with which you were made to serve, meaning the exiles, the Assyrian and Babylonian exile, you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon. So this is for the future. Once Babylon is taken down, this can then be sung. Oh, how the oppressor has ceased. The insolent fury ceased. He who is has broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of rulers that struck the peoples in wrath with unceasing blows, that ruled the nations in anger with unrelenting persecution. So Babylon is done. Babylon is down. God has redeemed his people out from under Babylon's control and punished Babylon. Verse 7, the whole earth is at rest and quiet. They break forth into singing, and they will be very excited once Babylon is gone from the picture to be returned back to the promised land by King Cyrus of the Persians, the Medes and the Persians, will be very joyful. The cypresses rejoice at you, the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since you were laid low, no woodcutters come up against us. Now that goes back to imagery we've seen before, that people and people groups are sometimes portrayed as trees or forests of trees. And when the leaders come through, the armies come through, they just chop those trees down. Babylon has been styled in such a way that they were going to come through and chop down all the people groups. It was going to be by God's judgment, but Babylon was going to be the agent in doing that. And so here is a little song, a little mockery about Babylon that, hey, since you were taken down, everything's quiet. Nobody's coming through chopping any of us down. Verse number 9. Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. It rouses the shades to greet you, all who were leaders of the earth. It raises from their thrones all who were kings of the nation. So now we have a portrayal of dead people in Sheol. Sheol is the Jewish way of thinking about the place where undead spirit, or the dead spirits, are waiting their final disposition. It's divided up into two regions. One is for the righteous dead, and the other is for the unrighteous dead. That's a side story. But in this portrayal, the idea is that many of those that the series of Babylonian kings took out, killed, sent to their death, they're waiting in Sheol to welcome the now dead Babylonian kings, waiting for them to join them in death. Verse 10, all of them will answer and say to you, you too have become as weak as we. You have become like us. Your pomp is brought down to Sheol. The sound of your harps, that is your celebratory music, it's gone. Maggots are laid as a bed beneath you, and worms are your covers, meaning you're dead. Your body is rotting, and your spirit is here in Sheol with us, awaiting God's final judgment disposition. Now, verse 12 is a fascinating section, the beginning of a fascinating section. Not everybody that does Bible study agrees with what I'm about to give you, but I feel pretty confident that what I'm going to present is correct. And that is that God, in speaking this prophecy through Isaiah, is focused in mocking the series of Babylonian kings that were used by him to bring judgment upon other people groups, but went overboard and therefore came under his judgment. And that's why they're going to end up in Sheol with all the other kings that they took down. But remember what Paul writes in the New Testament. Our struggle is not really against flesh and blood, but rather against principalities and powers, against these world rulers of darkness in the heavenly realms. Now, the heavenly realms idea there is not the place where God is ruling and reigning in perfection, but rather the unseen spirit realm, where not only do the good angels reside, but so do the bad angels, the rebel angels. And so we know that there is spiritual warfare going on behind the scenes all the time. That Satan and his minions are pulling strings and being puppeteers, manipulating circumstances and situations. And so God, from time to time, when he lays out the bad choices that people make, will look beyond that to the puppeteers, Satan and his bunch, causing trouble behind the scenes. And I believe this is one of those places. Isaiah 14:12. How you are fallen from heaven, Hallel, son of dawn. It has O day star in our English Standard Version text here, but it is a Hebrew name, Hallel. It's related to hallelujah, which has the idea of praising, but it's praising in the sense of making something brilliant, making something shine, either with light or with sound. And so it would appear that the great enemy of mankind was originally an angel, a cherub, we'll find out later in the book of Ezekiel, named Hallel, the brilliant one, the shining one. In the Latin text at this point, the name is Lucifer. We've softened the Latin C over time and say Lucifer. But it still means the shining one, the light bearer. And so I believe that this is addressed to the guy, the fallen angel we typically refer to by the title Satan, Satan, the adversary. How you are fallen from Satan, from heaven, Hallel, Lucifer, Satan, son of dawn. How you are cut to the ground, you who laid the nations low. So, Satan, you will suffer because you fell from the place where you started. And then we have, I think, the background for where he made his bad choices. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven above the stars of God. Stars is often a poetic descriptor for the angels. And so Satan believed that he could take control of the angelic host and be in charge. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of the assembly in the far reaches of the north. The language here is found in other documents of the ancient Middle East as a representation of the place of authority in the heavenly realms. And so Satan really believed that he could take over. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Now, why did he do that? Well, nobody knows for sure, but the speculation that we can see in some components of Bible teaching and definitely show up in the rip-off religious writings amongst the Muslim world is that when God made humanity in his image and his likeness, male and female, he told his angels to show deference to humanity similar to the deference that they were to show toward him as God and creator. Because after all, humanity was made in God's image and likeness. And Satan's response was basically, you've got to be kidding me. Why would I give such obeisance and service to this blood and flesh thing that is nothing like me, has weaknesses compared to me? And that's the reason why Satan went after Eve and Adam and started the whole rebellion there in the Garden of Eden. And so this passage in Isaiah 14, I think, is very helpful in understanding the self-centered attitude of Halel, Lucifer, Satan, at the beginning of his long war against us, and therefore against God. Verse 15, now we slip back to the taunt against the puppet of Satan in this time period that Isaiah is referencing, that is the king of Babylon. But you were brought down to Sheol, to the far reaches of the pit. Satan will eventually end up in the pit, but in this passage, I think the focus goes back to the human kings of Babylon. Those who see you will stare at you and ponder over you. Is this the man who made the earth tremble? Who shook kingdoms? Who made the world like a desert and overthrew its cities? Who did not let his prisoners go home? So they're all surprised. You're kidding me. This is the guy that made such a big impact upon the entirety of the eastern end of the Mediterranean basin? All the kings of the nations lie in glory, each in his own tomb. But you're cast out, away from your grave, like a loathed branch, clothed with the slain, those pierced by the sword, who go down to the stones of the pit, like a dead body trampled underfoot. You will not be joined with them in burial, because you've destroyed your land, you have slain your people. And we know that some of the kings of Babylon didn't get put in decent tombs whenever the Medes and the Persians overran the place, because God's judgment fell upon the Babylonian Empire. Mark your place. We'll get back here next time we're into the Word.